Welcome to today's show. I'm your host, JagsFan97. Today I will be breaking down the top 100 free agents of 2019. Out of 177 qualifying players, I brought it down to 100. These are the 100 players that I personally believe, out of the options available, will be the best players to choose from between position, age, potential, previous year's stats, and scheme as well. So let's begin. Number 100, we have Jonathan Hankins. He is a defensive tackle in which he had 36 tackles, 0 sacks, 0 forced fumbles. He's mainly a run stopper kind of defensive tackle. His best season was 2014, where he had 7 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 51 tackles with the Giants. His Madden rating is 80. He played for the Raiders last year, and the teams I do expect to go after him this year are the Chiefs, Dolphins, Raiders. All right. I do expect him to be with the Raiders again this year, probably on a 1-year deal, to help solidify that defensive line. Number 199, is Danny Shelton. He is very young, 26. He's definitely a run-stopping defensive tackle. This past year, he had 21 tackles, 0 sacks, 0 forced fumbles. He was a interior defensive lineman in a rotation with the Patriots, who won the Super Bowl this year. His best year was in 2016, where he had 59 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 0 forced fumbles. He is a 78 overall rated defensive tackle in Madden. Teams I do expect to go after him this year are the Chiefs, Broncos, and Patriots. I expect not the Patriots, but the Broncos to sign him this year. I would also expect that Demonte Pico Sr. will be released due to his age, and Danny Shelton is a very similar type player, so it'll make sense over there. Number 98 is Michael Pierce. This past year, he had 32 tackles, 0 sacks, 0 forced fumbles. His best year was 2016, where he had 35 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 0 forced fumbles. His rating in Madden is an 89. He played for the Ravens this past year. The teams I expect to go after him are the Chiefs, Texans, and Dolphins. I would expect the Chiefs to sign him. Number 97 is Marcedes Lewis. He's very old, 35 years old, but he is one of the very best run-blocking tight ends in the league, and he can still catch when given an opportunity. This past year, he split time with other tight ends on the Packers. He had 3 receptions, 39 yards. Clearly was not meant to be the guy catching the ball. It was more of a Jimmy Graham kind of show. But I can bet you with the Packers he was doing some wonderful run blocking. His best year was back in 2010 when he made the Pro Bowl. 58 receptions, 700 yards, and 10 touchdowns. His rating is 78. The teams I would expect to ask for his services are the Broncos, Cowboys, and Lions. I do expect the Cowboys to sign him. He will not be the starter, but he's going to be a veteran presence for that tight end group that needs one, especially when Jason Witten went to be a broadcaster. And that will definitely help in the run blocking as well. Number 96 is Deone Bucannon. He's played both middle linebacker, safety, and outside linebacker. I think this next year he will be brought back into the middle linebacker position. He's still young at 27 years old. This past year, he had 38 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble. His best year was in 2015, where he was a safety at the time. 112 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 interception, and 3 forced fumbles. He has a 74 overall rating in Madden, and he played for the Cardinals this past year. The teams I expect to go after Deone Bucannon are the 49ers, Raiders, and Rams. Depending on which team signs him, we'll either keep him as a linebacker or we'll bring him back to a safety. I expect the Rams to sign him, and he will join Mark Barron in the middle linebacker group, and you'll be seeing 2 hybrid linebackers / safeties in that position next year. Number 95 is Ty Netsky. He's played for a numerous amount of teams, from the Rams to the Saints to the Redskins and others. Um, he's not a full-time starter, but he is a great swing tackle. He is 33 years old, so he's got a couple years left. This past year, started 5 out of 14 qualifying games. Was injured for about a couple, and that was his best year. Was his past year. I love his size, 6'8". He's a little bit slower than most tackles, but when you have 6'8" size, it's very hard to get pushed around. He has a 76 overall in Madden. He, of course, played for the Redskins, and the teams that I would expect to sign him or go after him are the Browns, Jaguars, and Texans. I expect the Browns to go after this player. Number 94 is Darqueze Dennard, cornerback. He is 27 years old. He had 68 tackles, 0 interceptions, but 6 pass defenses. As far as tackling, he's a great tackler. When you look at his tackling ratio, he had a 54-14 ratio, so he's able to bring guys on his own, which is great, especially from the quarterback position. His best season was in 2017, where he had 85 tackles, 2 interceptions, 2 sacks, and 1 defensive touchdown. He was a former first-round pick with the Bengals. He has a 78 overall in Madden. The teams I would expect to go after his services are the Colts, Panthers, and Bengals. I do think he'll stay with the Bengals. He's a great player, especially as quality depth. I don't think the Bengals would want to have him go somewhere else. Number 93 is Donovan Smith. He is 26. He's been starting for the Buccaneers 5 years in a row. Has never missed a snap, never missed a start or game. Was a second-round pick 5 years ago. He has a 72 overall rating in Madden, which I think is a little bit low for that player. The teams that I would expect to go after him are the Browns, Jaguars, and Buccaneers. I do expect the Jaguars to go after him based on his resume of never missing a game and being able to start every game that he's played. The Jaguars had injuries on their offensive line big time, so I think they would definitely enjoy having someone that can stay on the field. Number 92 is tight end Zach Miller. He's very injury prone, and he's also old. He's 34 years old. He didn't play this year because he was on IR. But when he does play, he's good. We're looking at him as a backup tight end kind of guy, but he can start games if needed. In 2016, he had his best season where he had 47 receptions, 486 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns with a 10.3 yards per reception. He has a 79 overall rating in Madden. He played for the Bears this past season, of course, and the teams I would expect to go after him are the Broncos, Cowboys, and Dolphins. I do expect him to sign with the Dolphins as either their starter or backup. Let's see here. We have number 91, who will be Brent Grimes, cornerback. He is also very old, at 36 years old. He's got about a year or two left before he retires. This past season, he had 48 tackles, 0 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, and 6 pass defense. His best season was way back in 2009, where he had 66 tackles and 6 interceptions. This is a player that can get interceptions for you and create turnovers, but at his age, he's not going to be a starter for you. He had a 82 overall in Madden. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Colts, Panthers, and Seahawks. I do expect the Seahawks to sign him. It'll be very similar to a Antoine Winfield signing they had a couple years ago, where Brent Grimes will, go through the off-season program and he'll be able to either decide to stay with the team or retire. But it brings a veteran presence and a great backup into that group. Number 90 is defensive tackle Brandon Mebane. He is 34 years old, one of the better run stoppers as far as the defensive tackles are concerned. This past year, he played for the Chargers and had 40 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble. Um, his best season was in 2008, where he had 39 tackles, 5.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He has a 79 overall rating in Madden, and the teams I would expect to go after him are the Chiefs, Texans, and Browns. I expect the Browns to go after him. He's going to be very similar to a Shaun Rogers or an Antoine Rubin. Those guys are very stout at the point of attack, and as Brandon Meadane, much like Shaun Rogers, will be coming to the Browns as a veteran, and will be a great veteran presence in that group if it needs it. Number 89 is Shane Ray, outside linebacker. He is 26 years old. He had 10 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. Didn't play the entire year, but when he was on the field, he had one of his worst years. One of his best years was in 2016, where he had 48 tackles, 7.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. He has a 75 overall rating in Madden. He played, of course, with the Broncos for a couple years. He was a former first-round pick, and he's been quite a disappointment for the Broncos. He's more of a quality backup than a starter at his point in his career. He would have to really wow somebody or have an opportunity where someone got injured for him to start. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Colts, 49ers, and Raiders. I expect the Colts to go after him, mainly as a backup role. But if he has to start, then it'll be a better option than the Colts had last year. Number 88 is defensive tackle Haloti Ngata. He's 35 years old. He's a backup at this point. Had 17 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. His best season was in 2010, where he had 63 tackles, 5.5 sacks. This guy is not a pass rusher. One thing I do love about Haloti Ngata is that he's been able to play both defensive tackle and defensive end, so he's a tweener. So for whatever team signs him, they have options now to bring him in on either a defensive end or defensive tackle role. Excuse me. He had an 82 overall rating in Madden, played for the Eagles, of course, and won Super Bowl 53, not this past year, but the year before, with the Eagles when they beat the Patriots. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Chiefs, Ravens, and Cowboys. Back when Haloti Ngata was originally a free agent from the Ravens, I predicted that the Cowboys would go after him. They did, but they didn't sign him. This is an opportunity for the Cowboys again to bring in a great guy who can really stop a run and be that quality backup. I do think the Cowboys get him. Number 87 is halfback LeGarrette Blount. He is 32 years old. He's going to be a backup, but he's a great power back. This past year, he had 418 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns and 67 receiving yards. The very concerning thing is that he had a 2.7 average yards per carry. That was very unlike him. But the good news for him is he's always able to get touchdowns. In 2016, his best year, he had 1,161 rushing yards with 18 touchdowns with the Patriots. This is definitely a guy that you want on the goal line, where he will definitely get you that touchdown when needed. He has a 79 overall rating. He played for the Lions this past year. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Browns, Buccaneers, and Patriots. I do think he goes back to the Patriots as a backup, and will potentially win another Super Bowl with them at some point. Number 86 is Marcus Golden. He is 28 years old. He's a defensive end that can also play linebacker, so he's another tweener guy. He's had 30 tackles, 2.5 sacks this past season. Was a really down year for him, because in 2016, his best year, he had 51 tackles, 12 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. There are times when a player has a great season like Marcus Golden did in 2016, and then they have a dip. It's very hard to predict what will happen for a player like that for next year. I do expect that he'll be getting way better than 2.5 sacks, though. He had a 76 overall rating in Madden. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Raiders, Patriots, and Cardinals. I do think the Cardinals retain him, so that way he can pair up with Chandler Jones and they can create another pass rushing group. And I definitely think Marcus Golden will definitely bounce back. Number 85 is safety Eric Reed. He is 27 years old. This past season he had 71 tackles, 1 interception, 1 sack, and 5 pass defensed. His best season was in 2013 with the 49ers, where he had 77 tackles, 4 interceptions. His overall in Madden was 78, where he played with the Panthers this past season. The teams I expect to go after him this year are the Cowboys, Chiefs, and Panthers. I do think the Panthers sign him. Number 84 is wide receiver Devin Funchess. He's very young at 25. A former second-round pick of Carolina Panthers. This past season he had 44 receptions, 549 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. His best season was in 2017, just 2 years ago, where he had 63 receptions, 840 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. This is a guy that I'm just not sure about. On the safe side, make him a number 2 guy, but he has the potential to be a number 1. The concerning thing is while he had 840 receiving yards 2 years ago, he had a dip this past season where he had 549. He played the whole season, so it's just very concerning to me. His overall in Madden was 81. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Bills, Jaguars, and Titans. I expect the Titans to sign him as a backup where he can pair up with Corey Davis, give Marcus Mariota another weapon. Number 83 is Bradley Roby. He is 27 years old. He had 50 tackles, 1 interception, 2 forced fumbles. His best season was in 2016, where he had 39 tackles, 2 interceptions, 1.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 2 defensive touchdowns. His overall in Madden is 80, and he is a former first-round pick by those Broncos, which he played for. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Colts, Panthers, and Seahawks. I expect the Panthers to sign him. Basically as the same role as he played with the Broncos, a really strong slot corner that can kick outside when needed, bring in quality depth for the Panthers that need it. Number 82 is quarterback Teddy Bridgewater. He's still young at age 26. This past season he was the backup to Drew Brees with the Saints. He did play in the season finale, in which he had 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 118 passing yards, and just 5 rushing yards. The good thing about him is he has a good completion percentage, and he doesn't turn the ball much, if at all, during games. His best season was in 2015, where he had 14 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 3,231 passing yards with 192 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Of course, he had the 65% completions, and his quarterback rating was an 88.7. The reason he's so low on my list is because he doesn't throw for a lot of touchdowns. There's about 5 quarterbacks in this list that I feel are worth a top 100. Teddy Bridgewater is the 5th because he's a guy that's a game manager. He's not going to wow you with his stats. He's just going to make sure that, he doesn't ruin the game for you. His rating in Madden this year was a 78 with the Saints. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Dolphins, Jaguars, and Bills. I expect the Bills to sign him as a backup, very similar to a Tyrod Taylor, except he won't be starting unless Josh Allen just goes downhill the next season. Um, but that's what I expect out of Teddy Bridgewater as a backup. Number 81 is Jason McCourty, um, the twin brother to Devin McCourty with the Patriots. This past season, he had 70 tackles, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble, and 10 pass defense. His best season was in 2012, where he had 92 tackles, 4 interceptions, 1 forced fumble. His rating in Madden was 86 with the Patriots. I thought it was a little inflated because he was with the Patriots, but he's a great player that can start for you, but since he's 32 years old, probably need to have him as a backup. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Colts, Panthers, and Patriots. I expect him to sign with the Patriots for at least 1 or 2 more years, and then he'll retire, and probably retire at the very same time that Devin McCourty retires. Number 80 is offensive guard J.R. Sweezy. This past season, he started 15 out of 15 games, was only injured for 1 game. He's 30 years old, but his best season was in 2014, where he started the entire season. He's a little bit injury prone, but he's a great guard and definitely a swing guard if that's something you're looking for your team. His rating in Madden was a 76 with the Seahawks. The teams I would expect to go after him this year are the Bills, Jaguars, and not the Patriots, but the Packers, excuse me. And I do expect the Jaguars to sign him while they release A.J. Cann. J.R. Sweezy is an upgrade, but it's more of a stopgap kind of thing. In the best case scenario, you're looking at J.R. Sweezy to be your backup. Number 79 is Kenny Vaccaro. He's 28 years old. This past season, he had 58 tackles, 1 interception, 2 sacks, and 4 pass defensed. In 2017, his best season, he had 60 tackles, 3 interceptions, 1 sack, and 1 defensive touchdown. He is an 83 overall, where he played for the Titans this past season. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Chiefs, Saints, and Redskins. I expect the Redskins to sign him to bring in more talent at the safety group that the Redskins badly need. He's a good player, but he's not going to be super flashy. Number 78 is Thomas Davis. He's 36 years old. He's at the end of his run, and he's notified the Panthers that he doesn't want to play for them anymore. This past season for them, he had 79 tackles, and that was it. It was very unimpressive. His best season, though, was in 2015, not too long ago, where he had 105 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 4 interceptions, and 4 forced fumbles. This is a player that I personally feel like he didn't get enough playing time. He's a great tackler, and had he been given more opportunities, would have seen more sacks and interceptions from this past season. He had an 82 overall with the Panthers. The teams I would expect to go sign him, or at least go after him, are the Colts, 49ers, and Jaguars. I expect the 49ers to go after him just to bring him more competition to that linebacker group, and he'll probably play for 1 more season. Number 77 on this list is outside linebacker Shaquille Barrett. The Bronco, who is 26 years old, this past season had 28 tackles, 3 sacks. His best season was in 2015. We had 50 tackles, 5.5 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. He is an 80 overall rating in Madden. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Colts, 49ers, and Jets. I expect the Jets to go after him. He is a backup pass rushing specialist. I expect the Jets to use him just the same way the Broncos did. Number 76 is Quan Alexander, middle linebacker for Buccaneers. He is 25 years old, one of the youngest players available in this free agent class. He did get injured quite a bit this year, but when he played well. He had 45 tackles, 1 sack, and 2 forced fumbles. In 2016, his best season was 145 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble. This is the kind of player, when he's on the field, he's going to run all over the field, and he's going to make a bunch of tackles. He's one of the guys that's, when you look at Madden like a field general, that's Quan Alexander. He had an 80 overall rating in Madden. The teams that would expect to go after him are the Cardinals, 49ers, and Raiders. I expect the Raiders to sign him so John Gruden can bring him in. John Gruden still has good ties with the Buccaneers, and so John Gruden will be looking to create his own version of the Tampa 2 with the Raiders this next season. Number 75 is tight end Tyler Kroft. He's 26. He was injured for most of the year. He only played 4 games with the Bengals this year. Had 4 receptions, 36 receiving yards, and a 9 yards per receiving average here. He's very injury prone. What you're looking for is a guy that is a backup, but the good news about him is he's still young, and when he is on the field for the season, a good amount of time, he can create some damage. For example, in 2017, he had 42 receptions, 404 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. This is a very similar type of player to a Zach Miller. He had a 77 overall rating in Madden. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Broncos, Cowboys, and Lions. I expect the Broncos to sign him and to try and make him a starter. Whether or not it will backfire on him, we'll have to wait and see. Number 74 on the list is Preston Brown, middle linebacker. This past season, he had 42 tackles and 2 interceptions. Didn't play the entire season for the Buccaneers, but not the Buccaneers, the Bengals. But when he was on the field, he played well. His best season was in 2016, where he had 139 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. His rating in Madden is 78. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Cardinals, 49ers, and Raiders. With Deion Buchanan potential leaving the Cardinals, I do expect the Cardinals to sign Preston Brown and really create a true middle linebacker. Number 73 is defensive tackle David Irving. He's also young at 26 years old. This past season, he only played 2 games, but he had 1 sack and 4 tackles. He's very dominant on the field, and this is one of the best steals potentially in free agency. His best season was in 2017, where he had 22 tackles, 7 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. As a defensive tackle, whenever you're making more than 4 sacks in the season, you're really doing a great job. His overall in Madden was an 82 for the Cowboys. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Chiefs, Texans, and Cowboys. I do expect him to stay with the Cowboys on a short-term deal and see if he can stay on the field longer than 2 games. Number 72 is offensive guard Ramon Foster. He's 33 years old. He's played for the Steelers for a very long time. But the good news is he started 16 out of 16 games this past season, and he's had 3 years in 2012, 2015, and 2018, starting 16 out of 16 games. His overall in Madden is 82. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Bills, Jaguars, and Packers. I expect the Packers to sign him. It'll be very similar to a Jari Evans with the Packers a couple years ago, just a stopgap kind of player. Play for 1 season for him and that'll be it. Number 71 is Muhammad Wilkerson. He's 29 years old. He was also injured for the Packers this year. Only had 5 tackles, and that was it. He only played a few games, so it's hard to tell what kind of year he would have had he played the entire year. His best season was in 2015, where he had 64 tackles, 12 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. His overall in Madden is 83. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Giants, Raiders, and Packers. I do expect him to sign with the Packers again on another 1-year deal where he can prove himself, that he can stay on the field and still produce. Number 70 is cornerback Bashaud Breeland. He's 27 years old. This past season, he had 20 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 4 pass defense. In 2016, he had his best season where he had 73 tackles, 3 interceptions, 1.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. His overall in Madden is 76, in which he played for the Packers this past year, midway through the season. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Colts, Panthers, and Seahawks. In the previous year free agency, Breeland was expected to sign with the Panthers, but he failed his physical, and that's how he ended up with the Packers. I would expect the Panthers to give him a second chance, and he will pass his physical this time around. 69 on the list is Michael Kendricks, outside linebacker / middle linebacker. This is one of my favorite linebackers in this free agent class because he can play every linebacker position on the field. This past season, he didn't play the entire year, but he did have 19 tackles and 2 sacks. His best season was in 2013, where he had 106 tackles, 4 sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. He is an 82 overall in Madden. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Colts, Raiders, and Browns. Much like Bashaud Breeland with the Panthers, Michael Kendricks did sign with the Browns, but he was released earlier this past season. Ended up with the Seahawks, but I do expect the Browns to give him a second chance to add more depth to the Browns linebacker group. Number 68 is John Brown, wide receiver. He is 29 years old. He had 42 receptions, 715 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns, and the 15 yards per reception with the Ravens. He is definitely a deep threat. And in 2015, his best year of the Cardinals, he had 65 receptions, 1,003 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. His production has not really dipped too poorly from 2015 to 2018. So I do expect him to have between another 700 to 1,000 yard year this next season. His overall Madden is 80. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Bills, Jaguars, and Titans. I do expect the Jaguars to sign him so he can be their new deep threat. They drafted DJ Chark Jr. With their second round pick this previous year. He has not panned out, so they're going for another option, in my opinion. Number 67 on the list is Andy LaVentry. He is 33 years old. This past year, he only started 2 out of 2 games. He got injured for 14 games. The good news about him is through 2009, when he was drafted, to 2016, he had 8 straight years of starting 16 out of 16 possible games. Just because he was injured this past year doesn't mean he's injury prone. He did get injured, but I do think he'll get back to being able to start the full season next year. He's only missed 3 games his entire career. His overall Madden was 77 with the Falcons. The teams I would expect to go after him are the Bills, Titans, and Falcons. I do think the Falcons will re-sign him to a 1 to 2 year deal based on his history, and he is a great player. Number 66 on the list is outside linebacker Preston Smith of the Redskins. His age is 26. He had 53 tackles, 4 sacks, 1 interception this past season. His best season was in 2017, where he had 42 tackles, 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 1 forced fumble. Preston Smith is a guy that is not someone that is going to wow you, but he's great quality depth. And so with his 81 overall rating in Madden, the teams I would expect to go after him are the Colts, 49ers, and Raiders. I expect the Colts to sign him, and I expect him to compete with the other linebackers on that team for a starting position. Number 65 is Dante Fowler Jr. He is very young at 25. This past season he had 30 tackles, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble. He got traded to the Rams from the Jaguars, in which he played in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. His best year was in 2017, 2 years ago, where he had 21 tackles, 8 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles as a backup. He is a guy that can start. I liked what the Rams did with him, bringing him to the linebacker position, in which that was what he played in college. I felt like the Jaguars should have had him at linebacker, and that hurt his stats a little bit. Expect the next team to sign him to keep him at linebacker. Um, the teams I would expect to have him go after him are the Giants, Raiders, and Rams. I expect the Rams to re-sign him, considering they traded a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Dante Fowler Jr. has said he does want to stay with the Rams, so look for this to be a long-term contract. Number 64 is Ezekiel Ansah, defensive end. He is 30 years old. His past season, he had 11 tackles, 4 sacks. He didn't play the entire year, about more than half. His best season, though, was in 2015, where he had 47 tackles, 14 and a half